Good morning. Welcome all to our worship service here at Central Unitarian Church. My name is Susan Usatine, and I am proud to serve as your worship associate this morning. I'm also a proud member of the design team responsible for planning our move to 36 Bergen Street. CUC is an inclusive community of all ages which embraces diversity in identity, expression, and spiritual belief. We gather together each Sunday in worship to find inspiration, hope, and renewal each Sunday among this community of like-hearted individuals. If you are visiting us in person, please be sure to say hello to one of our welcome hosts. I saw Elizabeth Stewart, Patricia Joseph, please, and visit with them. If you are visiting us online, please be sure to click the link provided in the chat and sign our guest book by providing us with your name and contact information. Our flowers this morning, beautiful at the front of our room here, are provided by Rudy Jager. And we invite you to stay after service for coffee, conversation, and connection here in this same space. Coffee hour this morning is hosted by Aviva Weldon, the Caregivers Support Group, and Elizabeth Stewart. I have a few announcements for us this morning. Sunday, September 29th, we are joining Unitarian Universalists around the country in participating in a climate justice revival. In the midst of overlapping climate crises and mounting social injustice, we are in a time of great change and profound anxiety. Taking a note from those who have gone before us, the UUA Climate Justice Revival is meant to be a time to come together and recommit to climate justice. Please note, as part of our participation in this association-wide event, we will be holding a combined service with the Unitarian Society of Ridgewood to be held in Ridgewood at their congregation starting at 10 a.m. Again, starting at 10 a.m., half an hour earlier than our services. And that is 1 week from today, September 29th at 10 a.m.
And street parking only.
There is street parking only at the Unitarian Society of Ridgewood and at the Stop and Shop. More information on that to follow. Okay, illegally, says Sally. Also upcoming on October 6th, we will be holding a congregational meeting on that Sunday, October 6th, after our service. During this meeting, the design team will be providing a detailed update on our new building at 36 Bergen Street. In addition, voting members will be asked to approve a budget for the building renovations. Additional material will be sent out to all members later this week. Be on the lookout. Finally, Reverend Andrée is offering a number of spiritual development programs this fall, including monthly Soul Matters sharing circles to explore our monthly themes in depth in a small group setting, monthly current event forums to explore current events from a Unitarian Universalist perspective, and also discussion groups for this year's UUA Common Read, Authentic Selves, Celebrating Trans and Non-Binary People and Their Families. Full details for these sessions and other programs can be found in our September bulletin. Note, to date, we only have 2 people registered for these programs. Please register in the coming weeks to participate. Now, Reverend Andrée has a few additional announcements.
It's that busy time of year, so we have a lot going on. A couple other things that I wanted to mention is there are a number of spring fling events that are coming up that a number of you participated in spring fling and got tickets for. And a couple of those events are kind of low on attendance, so we're opening them up to others. There is there's a hike at Sterling Forest Lake that I am hosting that is looking for folks to join. There is an Oktoberfest evening hosted by the Mohawks, I believe, that is also looking for folks. And then finally, there is a welcoming winter fest that I believe is being hosted by Susan Gempler and Stu Couch. So if you're interested in any of those, Brooke is going to have all of them up on that back table, and you can sign them up if you want to join. So please do take advantage of that. It's a great way to meet with other fellow CUCers in a small group and enjoy various types of activities together. I also wanted to mention that in this upcoming week's newsletter, there's going to be a note from the Unitarian Society of Ridgewood about a number of activities that they are doing to help get involved in getting people out to vote. A number of you have already participated in our UU the Vote postcard writing campaign, which we've been doing in conjunction with both Ridgewood and the Palisades congregation, and we're continuing to work together and work off of a lot of the collaborative work for that congregation, for those congregations in our area to help make a difference for this big election. So please keep an eye out for that and look at the various ways that you can get involved if you feel like you are motivated to do something during this really important election season. With that, I am going to say announcements are over. Let's go into worship mode. Why don't you turn to those near you and give them a hearty hello. Susan's going to join me in saying our welcome words this morning. They are by the Reverend Joan Javier Duvall.
You are beloved and you are welcome here.
Whether tears have fallen from your eyes this past week or gleeful laughter has spilled out of your smiling mouth,
you are beloved and you are welcome here.
Whether you are feeling brave or brokenhearted, defiant or defeated, fearsome or fearful,
you are beloved and you are welcome here.
Whether you have untold stories buried deep inside or stories that have been forced beyond the edges of comfort,
you are beloved and you are welcome here.
Whether you have made promises, broken promises, or are renewing your promises,
you are beloved and you are welcome here.
Whatever is in your heart, however it is with your soul in this moment,
you are beloved and you are welcome here.
In this space of welcome and acceptance, commitment and recommitment, of covenant and connection, let us worship together. And I invite you to rise in body or spirit for our opening hymn, number 361 in the hymnal, the gray hymnal, or up on the screen. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Open your ears to
Now we ask that you join us in saying our chalice lighting words, which are based on CUC's vision statement. We light this chalice to remind us of our dreams, to nourish our heart, mind, and spirit, to work towards a better world for all, to embrace the whole of our human experience, to honor our past and of the present, to create a community where each of us may find healing, transformation, and hope.
Each year in June, our national body, the Unitarian Universalists Association, hosts something they call General Assembly. This is a time when thousands of UUs of all ages from around the country and beyond gather for worship, for learning, and to take action together on important issues of our association and of our world. It is quite an experience to gather with UUs beyond our immediate congregation and take a week to practice our liberal faith tradition together. Imagine, for example, a worship service with over 4,000 UUs, and you're there singing together Blue Boat Home. That only gives you a little bit of a sense of the experience of General Assembly. Central Unitarian Church has had a varied history with General Assembly. We've had, over the years, large contingents attending, and of our 4 or 5 assigned delegates, and maybe even more when we were bigger, and they've been actively engaged in GA. However, the year that I was called to be your minister, I was attending GA. I wasn't here yet. I was still attending GA on behalf of my other congregation, and I said, wow, I'm looking forward to meeting some of the congregants that I'll be serving. And Sally Gellert was the only one from CUC that was there, and she was virtual. Although Bruce Field did search me out, and so I got a little welcome from Bruce. But I noticed that there wasn't an engagement with CUC at that time. So over the 5 years that I've been here, I've worked with the leadership to try to re-engage in the larger work of our association, including General Assembly. Last year, GA was held in person in Pittsburgh, and this year GA was entirely online. And for both of those years, 4 CUC members have joined me in attending GA. That is Delores Connors, who is our current president of our board of trustees, Winsome Demetrius, John Freund, and Sally Gellert. And so today the group of us are going to share some reflections on our experience with General Assembly, and more importantly, what we feel our larger faith tradition is calling us to do. These last 2 years have actually been historical gatherings for the UUA, as for the first time we elected a Black queer woman as president of our association. In addition, we passed revised language of our Article 2 of our association's bylaws, which replaced the language of our principles and sources with 6 shared values. In addition, we have passed a variety of business resolutions and actions of immediate witness, including a business resolution this year which calls on our association to embrace transgender, non-binary, and intersex people as a fundamental expression of our UU religious values. And if you think about the fact how many religious organizations have treated that particular group, for a religious organization as a whole to come out and say, we embrace them as part of our religious values is quite a public statement. So after our service, we are going to invite you to join us for a Q&A. We'll be up here up front during coffee hour, and after a few minutes of folks mingling, we'll call folks forward so you can talk to us more about our experiences and the specific things we did at GA and these votes that I'm talking about just a little bit. But our service is not about votes, and it's not about resolutions or worship services. Our service today is about our living tradition. And ours is not a static faith. Ours is ever-changing based on our ever-growing understanding of the living world that we all share. Therefore, this is a tradition that we practice together. We don't always get it right. We often fail, but then we make amends and we try again. It's this ever-growing process with our larger association that calls us to actively engage in our faith. And that is what this service is all about. And so we're going to begin our sharing this moment by first hearing from John Freund. So I'm going to invite John up.
So the in-person gathering in 2023 was this energetic mass of UU humanity, showing the diverse promise of UUism, more so than I've seen in many of the congregations I've been in. So much so that I commented to a few people, including my fellow delegates, that I felt like a minority. Now, I've been a minority in rooms before, but ironically, not in UU circles. I honestly don't know if I actually was a minority, but there was a much larger percentage of the rainbow of skin color, ethnicity, and the rainbow of sexuality and gender blended through the group, not just in little pockets, not to mention up on the dais. I sensed a palpable enthusiasm, especially on the part of these often underrepresented groups, because maybe they looked around, liked what they saw, and felt welcome. They were not just there, but their energy was forward. This came up in various sidebars I had with people. One minister I know, a black man, spoke to the sense among many that this was an inflection point in the UUA, a denomination poised to take those progressive, inclusive principles of Unitarianism and Universalism and move them forward so that those principles aren't just words on banners that we pass on Sunday as we walk in and talk about them in worship. It was time to shake up how we talk about those principles and to put them into active policy and community outreach, to make action the core of UU culture. Yet, individual emotions among a large, diverse group are a challenge to the covenantal promise of UUism. The 2024 General Business Commentary was even more covenant challenging because that's when stuff got real, as we were actually voting whether to adopt the proposed changes to our bylaws. Changes that were designed to focus us on our shared values that keep us in covenant. We voted those changes in, rather resoundingly. We moved forward. Yet, there's always more discussion. In later conversations with fellow UUs on topics ranging from the national politics to the bylaw changes, we all shared a mutual distaste for the MAGA movement and its reactionary rhetoric. And yet, there is still pushback from some on these UU changes. It's understandable because they are changes. And yet, to be perfectly blunt, they are meant to ensure equitable access to the levers of power in the UA. And the pushback was largely coming from people with whom I share race, gender, and sexuality, and some veiled reservations regarding gender. It seemed to me they weren't pleased about shifting their position in the boat to make room. Some called it a power grab, and a few were talking obliquely about a schism in the UU movement, as if they were considering that. I admit to being change averse, and I describe my emotions surrounding our intra-denomination politics as trepidation. Conflict is uncomfortable, natural, and inevitable. Covenant is put in place not just to keep things smooth, but to deal with conflict. And keeping covenant is accepting our own invitation to participate. I can't hang a banner that says welcoming congregation and then leave the congregation when that invitation is accepted.
We are not alone. Our lives are built on shared commitments, giving and receiving together. Our congregation serves as a place where we intentionally practice this shared living, interdependence in a culture that overemphasizes independence. One of the ways we practice our interdependence is through our congregation's finances, which depend on the generous contributions of members and friends. We pause each week to recognize this particular form of sharing, each of us giving what we can to support the mission and vision of Central Unitarian Church. Your financial contribution helps each and every one of us to grow, to serve, and to most importantly, to live lives centered on love. Our offering will now be gratefully received. Let us join our voices together again as we speak our dedication words based on CUC's mission statement. We dedicate these gifts in service of our mission to welcome all into a home of spiritual diversity that challenges us to become our best selves, to minister to one another in love, and to serve the greater community.
To continue our reflections, I'm going to invite up Sally Gellert, and when Sally's through, Winsome Demetrius is going to share some reflections as well.
Good morning. I have enjoyed the privilege of being your delegate to GA almost every year since I first learned of GA, when Eileen Gilbert came back from Fort Lauderdale in June 2008 and said, GA passed a resolution supporting single-payer health care. Can we do a program with PNHP, Physicians for National Health Program? I was the chairperson of what was then the Social Responsibility Committee, now the Social Action Team. Committees meet, teams act, and had been a member at CUC since 1998. And my first response was, what's GA? A quick answer to that question, the main authority in Unitarian Universalism. The denomination is not centralized, as is Catholicism and others. We don't have a pope or bishops, and the staff in Boston are our employees, with the annual General Assembly being the main decision-making body. Just as in civil society, democracy is not a spectator sport. I volunteered to be a delegate to GA 2009 in Salt Lake City, one of my favorite places. Gathered folks in the lounge to watch videos from the two candidates for the UU presidency. Our choice, Peter Morales, won. Gathered another group to read and edit the Statement of Conscience, Creating Peace, that had been written by the Commission on Social Witness based on 4 years of UU study, and nervously headed for Utah. I took to GA immediately, no time for stories, and the next year was part of the beta test group for the off-site delegates. We were about 85 folks, and it went pretty well, though they shut off the feed whenever the choir sang, nobody having purchased streaming rights for songs. We let them know loud and clear that we were not second-class citizens, and that was not acceptable. All was well until GA 2012 in Phoenix, when Justice GA delegates left the hall for public witness at Sheriff Joe's tent city and left us behind. Luckily, Occupy Phoenix was on site to stream, and despite institutional reluctance to put out a less-than-perfect feed, Larry Stratoff and the UU Tech team picked up the Occupy feed for us delegates, so we could be there too. Fast forward a decade or so, and technology has made democracy easier, but there is still concern about centralization and control. In the last few years, a discussion page has been created on UUA.org, but it's not terribly well publicized and opened only at times when UU executives deem moderation to be worthwhile. This was a problem between the two votes for the Article 2 revision. At GA 2023, with a lot of controversy about the revision, UU leadership pressed for a yes vote, saying that it was not a vote for approval, but a vote to keep the discussion vote going. Many delegates gave them the benefit of the doubt, and the revision passed in 2023. But that discussion page, which had been well used during GA, was shut down immediately after GA closed. No alternative was provided. Some delegates independently set up a Slack page, but with limitations of free accounts, they moved to Facebook. Not everyone has access there. I've been banned from Facebook, so I was completely cut off from that discussion. Amendments were possible, but without a discussion platform, only folks well-connected in UU circles found it reasonably easy to get the 15 congregational votes needed to put an amendment on the agenda. Others struggled. Still, flawed or not, GA is an exciting experience and one that I very much enjoy each year.
Good morning. I'm happy to see everyone. I don't know why I feel nervous for some reason. So I just wrote something, I'll read it. I'm a relatively new Unitarian. I joined not knowing anything about the faith, really. And I joined solely on the basis of the people I met at Central Unitarian. And I stayed because of all of you. My first brush with the faith at large affirmed my decision to become Unitarian. It was wonderful to see the faith in action. The first time I went was last year when we went to Pittsburgh. I got a hotel room. I invited my sister, my nephew, and Sia was there. And we made sort of like an adventure out of it. We drove down. You know, previously, my idea of religion was that religion was a set of inherited rules, inherited beliefs, inherited set of traditions that you either love, you leave, or you tolerate. And the UU General Assembly taught me that even as a latecomer like myself, I can become an architect of our faith. This is important to me because I know what it's like to have a history that feels like a burden, heavy, materially and spiritually heavy. However, this is the first time I feel empowered, powerful even, and hopeful that as a UU, I can have a say in what the next generation will feel about the history of us as Unitarian Universalists. That we're working on a gift, that our legacy will be a gift to our children, our nieces, our nephews, our chosen children, and newcomers like me to the faith. You go there and it's the big congregation, it's a big meeting. And we're from Bergen County. We see sort of like the same, it's not that diverse in Bergen County or even where I live. And rarely do we get to see flyover America. You know what I mean? So it's rare that I saw Americans from all over the US. When do we really have a chance to see that? And all that in the way that we look, the way that we talk, the different kinds of Americans that are around. And to have them all be UUs in the same room was really interesting for me. And then to also see the youth that are coming from all over the country with different expressions, but somehow they all felt like Unitarians. If they could have a feeling, they all felt that they're all open and welcoming and so super articulate and so passionate. They know that they're going to get a lot of pushback for what they believe in, but they're still there, still rah, rah, rah. And I'm feeling older and I'm like, wow, the energy. It was really amazing to see. And these weren't just high schoolers. These were young adults in their 20s. And I'm like, wow, you're still interested in this. Wow, exciting. It's not about you having kids while you're here. You could have left, but they came back with their passion. So that was really exciting for me. And so I mean this sincerely, not because I feel that UUs are all on the same page or there are no fundamental conflicts or disagreements about the direction of the church. I'm glad to see the robust debates and thoughtful conversations about Article 2. That was really profound, seeing how we're placing love at the center. We're not placing tradition at the center. We're not placing rules at the center, but love at the center. And I was happy to see the generational differences being hashed out. Although I was hurt by some of the things that were said, I was overwhelmed by the other voices that were so affirming. So these conflicts or disagreements, I felt, were our way of recognizing and accepting each other. And it's a part of our stories that we'll tell, that we did disagree, that, our positions were, fought for and won. And so, yes, we're far from perfect and we're far from united on the issues, but we're working through a path forward. So please do not be deterred by the larger conflict or the conflicts in our conversations, right? It's a beautiful struggle. And one of my favorite bits of American lore is when Thoreau was in jail and Emerson said, "What are you doing in here?" And he said, "What are you doing out there?" Right? So, and when we are thinking of being UUs and we're in here in this small group together, let's not forget to go out there. Let's not forget to be a part of the larger conversation, and let's not forget that it's our duty and it's our responsibility to engage and to become, as a way of leaving something wonderful for the next generation of UUs. Thank you.
Now we take a moment in our service to pause and enter into a time of meditation as we share together the joys and sorrows of this community. This is something we do each week as a way to care for each other. I have a few written joys and sorrows here, which I will share. And then I will read out loud any joys or sorrows from those of you that are online. So if you're online, please take a moment to type them in the chat. And then I'll come back to this room and invite you to share out loud the name of anybody else you're holding in your heart. So let's prepare for this caring and loving time together. Let us take a breath in and breathe out as we enter into a space of holy listening, as we share and receive the joys and sorrows for today, Sunday, September 22nd, 2024. And I invite you now to share out loud the name of anybody else you are holding in your hearts this morning. For all these joys and all these sorrows, both those spoken and those that remain unspoken, let us hold them all together in loving care as we enter into a moment of silence. Spirit of life, beloved, we gather each Sunday carrying a mix of thoughts and emotions from all the milestones and minutiae of life, pains and happiness that come with them. And we gather, as always, unfinished, incomplete, ever-changing, ever-learning, ever-growing. May we never close our minds or our hearts to this continual process of becoming. For when we do, that is when we fail to practice this living tradition of Unitarian Universalism. May we be open to new ideas and new ways of being, to old ideas and old ways of being. May we be open to each other, and may we be open to ourselves. May this be the way we realize both transformation and liberating love. Blessed be, and amen. I invite you to remain seated as we sing our next hymn, I've Got Peace Like a River. I did miss a sorrow here that was put online that I want to share before we continue. This comes from the Usatine family. A sorrow for Brooke Dreyerman and her parents who were tragically killed in a car accident last Sunday night. She was a senior at Pascack Hills High School, and her loss is felt around Bergen County. So we hold that pain and that sorrow for all those who knew them. And as we move from this time of caring back to this time of reflection, I'm going to invite our board president, Delores Connors, up to round us out in some of our reflections this morning.
Good morning, everyone. All right, before I start, I'd like to do a bit of a commercial and also use a teaching strategy. If you want someone to remember, a student or anyone to remember something, you ask them to repeat it themselves. So I'm going to ask you, where are we next Sunday? What time? 10 o'clock. Oh, okay. All right, sounds good. I'll move forward. So my experience at GA, I have to tell you that it was personal because I went with an expectation. And I'll talk to you a little bit about that expectation in just a second, but I want to bring you back a little bit also with past experience. You see, in Forest Avenue, I would sit in the back of the church, and every year the minister or Sally would come up and remind us of GA or say something about it. And so I knew from someone sitting in the back, not knowing very much about the UUA, that it was a place where people gathered. That I knew, and that was pretty much all I knew. But it was okay because it was a part of who we were, and I understood that. But then Reverend Andrée came. And Reverend Andrée began to talk about the UUA in her sermons, and I became more familiar with some of the responsibilities, some of the legislature, some of the policies. I became a little bit more aware. And so my level of GA, my level of the UUA became a little bit stronger. All right, and then, I don't know if she did it intentionally, but we were asked to participate. Not leave Sally alone by herself with Reverend Andrée, but a few of us were asked to join. And I had thought about it and said, oh, I don't know, I'm not sure. And then something miraculous happened. It was a Saturday, 2 years ago, I think 2 years ago now, a year ago. And we, a small congregation, had come together and done something significant. You see, when we passed the vote to sell our church and to look for a new church home, what I witnessed was a sense of unity that was strong and powerful. And even though we were a small congregation, it was very, very real. And so I thought about Reverend Andrée's ask, and I said, I'm going to show up. I'm going to go. I am so proud of us, and our representation matters. And I go there with a sense of pride. So I'm always bragging about the church, always talking about it. I mean, I talk about the church so much that my son, I'm noticing, if he wants to change the subject, he'll just say, how's the church going? And it's always, the vault door just got, like that. So it's like that. So I do feel a sense of pride, but this was going to be different. And so there I was. It was Friday night, and I walk into the convention hall, and it was beautiful. Banners on top of banners on banners on banners, quilt, crochet, satin, cotton from UUA is all over, just embracing you as soon as you walked in. It was absolutely gorgeous, and I felt so excited. And then I go into the convention hall. And as Reverend Andrée said, there had to be about 4,000 people there. But they weren't just sitting. They were handling business. I had never seen anything like that. I'm a teacher and I go to teacher conventions all the time, and we have our lead speaker keynote, and then it gets sloppy after that. But for the most part, this was real. It was somewhat intimidating because people came prepared. See, the UUAs all over, they're serious about the work that they do, regardless of what position they stand on. And I was sitting there amazed, even with the people I didn't agree with, in some of their opinions about articles. I sat there still amazed at our unity and their ability to debate and argue. And they needed to, and I'm glad that they did. They would throw in some beautiful music, some beautiful songs in the middle of all of this business gathering stuff, because it was heavy, but the music was absolutely wonderful. And then that Friday evening, I wasn't expecting it to happen on Friday, but then it happened. A woman sitting next to me had said, "Oh, where are you from?" And I proudly said, "Central Unitarian Church of Paramus." And I felt good. I felt like we belonged. I felt like we were there. And it just was wonderful. So I expected to show up to represent us, expected to show up to represent our place. And I did. And then Saturday, it got even better. You see, there's the convention and there's business that happens, but then there's also workshops that take place. So you can build your understanding of other levels of things that are happening. And there I walk into a workshop, and this is the icing on the cake. Reverend Carlton Smith, who was the guest minister here when I first came, he was presenting. Now I would recognize him, he's the minister. I sat in the back of the church, not thinking he would recognize me. And there he was, he saw me, and we embraced, and he gave me a big hug. And he said to me, a person in that space, "So how are the good people of Central Unitarian Church doing?" And I proudly said, "Wonderful." So it was absolutely a wonderful experience. I would like for everyone to not have the four of us and Reverend Andrée be a part of this year. It's again in person in Maryland, which is not too far away, in June. So we're putting it out there, but it is a wonderful experience. We are bigger than this space, and we matter in representation. So with that, thank you.
I attended my first UUA General Assembly not too long ago, actually. It was in 2012 in Phoenix, Arizona. I wasn't yet in seminary, but I was thinking about it. And my home congregation was looking for delegates, so I raised my hand. It probably sounds overstated, but it's true. Attending GA changed my life because it changed my perspective on Unitarian Universalism. At that point in my life, I'd already been active in a few UU congregations since I was a young adult, and I'd attended some regional UU events, so I'd met people outside my own congregations. But I'd never gathered with thousands for worship, workshops, and public witness before. I met tons of interesting people that year, starting with the airport, where I ran into a number of UUs in the waiting lounge along with me who had chalice pins on. And I got to feel, not just think, but feel in my body that our tradition was something much bigger than me and any of our single congregations. So many of the individuals I met at GA, from the youth to the young adults to seniors, lived Unitarian Universalism in a way that I did not up till that point. And many of my fellow congregants that I knew in my home congregation did not. These weren't just people who went to UU congregations. Many of them that I met actually grew up in the faith, and to most of them, engaging in the dialogue and the actions of our wider association was synonymous with practicing Unitarian Universalism. So I came away from that first GA experience asking myself, can you truly call yourself a UU without engaging in some level with our wider association? Since then, I've attended at least a portion of GA every year, either in person or online. And for the past 7 years, I've also attended ministerial gatherings that precede GA. I've served as an attendee, I've served as a delegate, as an alternate, as a minister, and in the minister gatherings, I often serve on our right relation teams, helping hold our connection to each other. I've been elated in these spaces with joy and hope rekindled at the promise of our tradition. I've been frustrated and disappointed, at times with my heart broken at our fellow UUs and how we still manage to marginalize and dismiss and harm each other. And I felt everything in between. And I've pastored others through all of these emotions and more. Even at the same time, pastoring to different people that are holding completely different experiences from each other. One who's elated and one who's feeling disconnected or harmed or a lack of belonging. I've witnessed all of that. In General Assembly, it's this huge, beautiful, messy, and imperfect process. And it's what we have. For many UUs, it remains our primary way of getting together beyond the walls of our individual congregations to both figure out and practice our faith together. Just in the time that I've engaged in GA, we as an association have confronted white supremacy thinking and systems within our own history and in our own present. We've witnessed and taken action on a variety of social justice issues, from Black Lives Matter to prison reform to climate change to reproductive rights to trans rights and more. We've transformed the leadership of our denomination, as some of you were hearing through these reflections, so that the faces of those leading us look more like the faces of those who've traditionally been on the margins of our faith. And through all of this, we've been learning how to stay in relationship to each other as people with our own, as other people within our own faith tradition wrestle with all of this, and in some ways also people pushing back on these changes, including the shifting face of leadership. That's the hard part of this engagement, is wrestling through all of that. And when I got to CUC, having experienced all this, I found that the vast majority of our members had no idea of what was going on. Just a very few remained engaged. And I've done what I can, probably imperfectly, but after hearing some of these reflections today, hopefully with a little bit of success, as your minister, to help re-engage in not only the process of GA, but just in general with the wider association. But there's only so much that your minister can do. And during the pandemic, this congregation had to make a lot of tough decisions around money. And one of the choices the leadership made, was to choose to cut funding from the UUA entirely for a year, which meant that 1 year later, we weren't even allowed delegates at GA, which means we could go, but we had no vote, we had no voice that year. We were shut out of the dialogue at a national level until, for an entire year. And that situation in particular made me ask, can we call ourselves a Unitarian Universalist congregation if we don't actively engage in the larger association? And I posed the same question to our board. And this is about the time we started getting a new influx of people attending GA. So we've started to turn in another direction. Not just with the engagement of individuals, but with the help of the Endowment Trust Fund. Last year, we paid our full amount of UUA requested dues based on our size and our budget. And for the last 2 years, thanks to John and Sally and Winsome and Delores, we've filled our full set of delegates to GA, ensuring that CUC had a vote in many of these historic discussions that were happening in our association. So we've once again begun to accept this invitation of our larger tradition. We can do more. What is it that you will do? Consider the various invitations and experiences you've heard in our reflections this morning to engage in our larger faith. Maybe you're moved from the service to join us in Baltimore this coming June for GA. Perhaps you'll make it a point to just regularly read the UU World magazine or go to the UU World website regularly and view what's there. Perhaps you'll engage with other UUs in a variety of collaborations that we have going on, including the Climate Justice Revival next week. Where? Ridgewood, right? Thank you, Delores. I'm going to use that. And also the UU Vote initiative that both Ridgewood and Palisades have been engaged in, and we've been partnering together. So there's no one way for individuals to answer the call, but answer the call as a congregation we must, each and every one of us in our own particular way, so that we can continue to proudly call ourselves a Unitarian Universalist congregation.
May we join our voices together and speak our chalice extinguishing words based on CUC's covenant. We extinguish this chalice flame, but not our promise to each other, to act with grace, to hold each other in love, to serve this community and our world. This promise of the heart serves as a reminder of how we live together. May it bring joy to our collective lives. If you would now rise in body and spirit and sing together hymn number 1018, Come and Go With Me.
Come and go
Our closing words this morning come from the Reverend Kimberly Quinn Johnson. The first line of these closing words come from the poet June Jordan in her poem For South African Women, which she presented at the UN on August 9th, 1978. We are the ones we have been waiting for. We are not perfect, but we are perfectly fitted for this day. We are not without fault, but we can be honest to face our past as we chart a new future. We are the ones we have been waiting for. May we be bold and courageous to chart a new future. May we have faith in a future that is not known. We are the ones we have been waiting for. Blessed be, and amen. Thank you, Matt, for lovely music this morning. And thank you to all our reflection speakers, Delores, Winsome, Sally, and John, for sharing your thoughts with us this morning. Thank you to Susan Usatine for being our worship associate. Please, and thank you, Phil and John, also for being tech. And thank you for double hatting, John. Please join us for coffee and connection. And in about 15 minutes, those of us who are speaking will gather in the front, and anybody who wants to stay for a Q&A with us, we'd be welcome to have that conversation with you all. So thank you.